Can you hear me? I can speak like this. Okay. All right. Is that good?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm going to do this. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Maureen MEYER, and I have just completed my master's in the Cherokee and Environmental Studies Department at the University of New Mexico. So this paper focuses on medicinal plant use in the Commonwealth of Dominica, a Caribbean island in the Lesser Antilles. The purpose of this research was to understand the cultural and environmental factors associated with the use of medicinal plants on the island. In conducting this research, the cultural aspects, especially regarding the relationship that the culture has with the environment, the beliefs surrounding health and healing, how and where this knowledge originated, became important factors in examining medicinal plants on the island. The actual species, along with where they reside within the environment, reflect the importance of disturbed flora within the Caribbean landscape and within the African diaspora. So, why the Caribbean? Well, my interests both academically and personally have focused on tropical rainforests, the ecosystem as a whole, and plants in particular, as well as the African diaspora. The Caribbean can be defined by each one of these aspects, and is thus an ideal place to examine human and environmental relationships, focusing on both culture and place. Beyond that, the uniqueness of this region is exemplified through its history, which within the past 400 years has been marked by European colonization, the decimation of Amerindian populations, and the implementation of African slavery. However, each island's history is distinctly separated by the colonizers. So whatever European culture colonized a specific island, the Africans, so when and where they arrived, depending on the time period, the indigenous populations, whether one remained and what kind of cultural interactions have occurred, along with the topographical features and adaptations undergone to survive on each island. Sidney Mintz and Richard Price acknowledged that in the Caribbean, people from different cultures interacted. And it was through these interactions that information and knowledge was exchanged, which would ultimately influence the creation of each island's culture and customs. Thus, through examining the botanical knowledge associated with medicinal plants and agricultural practices, we can begin to better understand the establishment and importance of these human-environmental relationships in the Caribbean, specifically in Dominican. So you may ask, why Dominica? Well, Dominica's unique cultural history, along with its rugged terrain, offers a distinctive setting to examine these human-environmental relationships. The cultural makeup consists of African, Carib, French, and British cultures. It was the last colonized island in the Caribbean, so it wasn't colonized until 1763, which resulted in a late introduction of African slaves to the island. At the same time, there was a significant period of time prior to colonization where the island remained a neutral territory, meaning it was a refuge for Caribs, other Amerindians, and Maroons. Now, these are all important aspects of the society to consider when attempting to examine cultural influences in plant use. Throughout Dominica's history, the physical environment has played a role in the human-environmental relationships on the island. It is an island that is 29 miles long and 16 miles wide, with 2/3 of it continuing to be covered in forest, and 9 active volcanoes that extend and ridge north to south down the middle of the islands. So the extremeness of this environment not only categorized the island as unique, but has continuously impacted the relationships, the human-environmental relationships. The ways in which plants have been used reflects cultural mixing and how people have adapted to sustain themselves. The combination of all these factors, culture, environment, and plants, have played a role in the creation of Dominican culture. So the theoretical framework for this research is based on the scholarship regarding African contributions in the New World landscape. John Thornton's work emphasized how Africans brought with them cultural heritage, languages, aesthetics, philosophies, in addition to Robert Vokes and Judith Carney's work, which is focused on Africans as botanical agents. Second, the research aligns with the ethnobotanical and ethnopharmacological studies that highlight the importance of weedy species within disturbed areas. settled landscapes are spaces where these species can be found in abundance. Third, through acknowledging there is a close connection to the environment and examining important species, we can begin to see that this knowledge surrounding their use developed throughout Dominican history, which is a result of the culture's ability to be adaptable and flexible. These characteristics can further be associated with the creation of cultural identity. So, the question that guided my research was, what cultural characteristics can be identified through examination of medicinal plant use on the island of Dominican? The research was conducted in 5 sites on the leeward side of the island. The towns and the villages were Rousseau, Portsmouth, Soufriere, Trafalgar Falls, and Morne Prosper. Rousseau and Portsmouth are the 2 largest towns and urban centers on the island, whereas the 3 remaining villages were much smaller in population and situated in mountain valleys, in the interior and along the coast. The geographic difference between each of these places allowed for a comparison of information based on species availability and knowledge of use. So, to conduct this research, the qualitative methods in the form of semi-structured interviews were used. The initial meeting and social context in which we met affected the length of time we spent talking, which ranged from approximately 30 minutes to as long as 5 hours in a day. Since much of this was ethnographic research, my interactions and the ways in which I was perceived by Dominicans would inevitably impact my research. As the entire island and culture was new to me, I had to seek out what Mullings considered positional spaces, where the interview is conducted in such a way that there is a level of trust and cooperation between both parties. In order to create an open and safe interview setting, the majority of these interviews were conducted in public spaces. During the interviews, I asked all of the informants these 5 questions. In total, 15 people were interviewed, 4 women and 11 men. 2 of the informants were known herbalists within the community, while the remaining 13 had previous experience interacting with plants, either through growing up in the country farming or in their current occupations. So, with the data for this research was categorized within Excel spreadsheets for analysis. The spreadsheets distinguish the plant's common name, the Creole patois name, scientific name, plant family, location where it was harvested, the part of the plant that was used, the illnesses it treated, and in the form in which it was most likely administered. In the data, I found that there were 128 different species identified by these informants. Salience, when talking about plants, is often attributed to the number of times a species is acknowledged by the people who are interviewed, along with the similarity of uses. In this study, 48 of the plants were acknowledged by more than one informant, and out of these, the top 13 were used to treat a diversity of ailments. In addition, the fact that many of these species were available in different areas of the island implies that the broader Dominican culture has access to these species, increasing the chance of cultural retention and survival. Among those identified more than once, half of them originated outside of the Atlantic world. This suggests that the botanical knowledge associated with these species could have originated outside of Dominica and blended as cultures mixed on the island. Oh, there you go. So, what did I do with my data? I created categories of plant use. Each species was categorized according to ailment treated and further delineated into general categories. The majority of illnesses acknowledged by the informants fit within the physical ailments, nourishment, and skin conditions categories. Physical ailments were indicative of internal illnesses associated with the immune system. Plants used to treat external ailments or infections were placed under skin conditions. And nourishment was used to recognize when a plant was said to have extra added nutritional value. So in determining cultural salience, I was mainly looking for repetition across condition and species. So for physical ailments, the most salient conditions within these were cold, stomatics, and the use of plants as blood cleansers. The species used to treat these were Symphogan centraris, lemongrass, Ocimum basilicum, basil, Mentha peperata, peppermint, and Zingiber officinale, ginger. Furthermore, all of these species were noted to have nutritional value, to either have nutritional value or to treat skin conditions. Now, this is a small percentage of the plants that were told to me, but in highlighting these, we can begin to see what conditions affect Dominican population and that are how they treat them with medicinal plants. So for skin conditions, various plants are used to clean the body and to treat skin problems. However, here the salience that I recognized, along with species, was also the specific part of the plant that was used. The most common plants used were, the most common parts of the plants used were leaves and stems. These were mainly used in either a bath, a poultice, or as a rub. So for example, Glycerium sepium, glory cedar, was used by flora-informants as a shampoo and to cleanse the body. In this picture, my daughter had gotten mosquito bites and a skin rash, and so we were giving her a bath in glory cedar. In addition, while conducting interviews with individuals, I realized that the line was often blurred between food and medicinal plants. So for example, Cinnamomum xylanicum, cinnamon, was told to me by an informant she used it to manage her diabetes. So she would use it every day in either her tea or by adding it to her food. Food plants, especially those with edible fruit, also were acknowledged for their nutritional benefits. So when asked what plants you eat, some people would say that I eat a mango because of the fiber, or kelp has a lot of iron. So I noticed this line was often blurred. So what does this mean about Dominicans and Dominican culture? Well, what I found was that because of this complex web of history, there are important and almost fundamental human-environmental relationships that are cultivated and expressed in the everyday lives of Dominicans. What is this complex web of history? Well, these are the histories of the various groups of people who came to mix on the island, and how people adapted to Dominica's environment, which ultimately has led to the cornucopia of plants used for the food and medicine. What are these relationships? The human-environmental relationships are revealed in the interaction and knowledge that Dominicans have with plants, the agricultural practice of small-scale farming, and the widespread use of plants as medicine. Furthermore, it is the understanding of the tropical environment in which they live, how to exploit resources, ways to react during natural disturbances, hurricanes, landslides, or flash floods, knowing the benefits of the sea, rivers, and hot springs, and ultimately how to utilize these resources for their health and livelihoods. Historically, botanical and ecological knowledge has been instrumental in the survival in Dominica. Provision grounds and subsistence agriculture has been an essential aspect of the broader Caribbean region, both during and after slavery. It is within these grounds that the cultures throughout the Caribbean came to adapt to the environment in which they live. Dominica's cultivation systems reflect a blending of cultures through the use of various types of gardens, as well as within the actual plant species used. In Dominica, I examined what Pulsifer called common grounds, ravine mountain provision grounds, and dooryard gardens. Each one of these grounds reflects various cultural histories. The cultivation of flat areas containing only one or two crops reflects European agricultural practices, whereas ravine mountain grounds with multiple plants and intercropping reflect African agricultural practices. The use of various species from all of the world signifies the mixing of cultural traditions and knowledge, and which ultimately is seen in what is created today. The Herbal Pharmacopoeia, I think you gotta go. I think we messed up. Keep there, just go there. The Herbal Pharmacopoeia found on the western coast of Dominica is mostly made up of pan-tropical weedy species. Okay, go back one. I'm so sorry. So, why are weeds important in medicinal plant use? For one, many of these species have both abiotic and biotic factors that can influence their production and growth. Many of these species are allelopathic, meaning that they inhibit the growth of other species close to them, and they also contain secondary compounds, tannins, lignans, cardioglycosides, which react within the body, providing medicinal benefits. These species tend to thrive in anthropogenic landscapes with the exchange of plant species throughout history. Many species that were not native to a certain area became more or less naturalized within a new environment. So why is this important and what does it tell us? As we begin to think about cultural development, retention of traditions, we have to think about what makes these plants known. The human-environmental relationship in Dominica is a result of how various cultures came to adapt to living there. The previous knowledge of species was fostered within these environments. In addition, the close proximity and access allowed for continuous experimentation. The floristic similarity of these species found throughout the island has allowed botanical knowledge to be transmitted and withheld within the society. Many of these species are not only found or used in Dominica, but when compared with other Caribbean research, we can begin to see clear similarities in salient species across the region. Here I found that 53 species in my research have also been acknowledged within the broader Caribbean literature that focuses on medicinal plants. That being said, this shows us that the plants and the disturbed space are an important part of both the Caribbean society and culture. However, in Dominica, the unique factor that I found on the island is the relation to health is broader than plants and encompasses the knowledge and utilization of other healing resources. There are numerous freshwaters, the sea, and hot springs that are all utilized for bathing, cleaning, and healing. Dominicans whom I spoke with also knew the locations of good mineral drinking springs believed to have healing powers. Now, what we must understand, what I wish to highlight, is that this knowledge is acquired from living in a space over time, and that knowledge is then passed down from generations. The passing on of knowledge is a form of cultural expression that can be tied to the creation of cultural identity. In Dominica, most of my informants I spoke with identified the length of time of knowing about plants as "since I know myself." This means that this knowledge is a part of who they are and what they can identify with. Their grammatical saying could of course just be the common phrase, but in the context of the question it related to time, knowledge, and memory. Each of these concepts can be associated with identity because knowledge is accrued over time through experiences, and it is the memory of these experiences that shape a person's identity. In addition, there are cultural factors that perpetuate these beliefs of the healing power of plants, such as the fact that bush teas are drank every day to alleviate illness and promote health, as well as the fact that some Dominicans I spoke with continue to seek medicinal benefits, assistance from herbalists, even after seeing Western doctors. The importance of these plants and the role that they play in the everyday lives expresses the connection and relationship that Dominicans have with their environment. So in conclusion, the narratives of how people use plants, why they use them, and how this knowledge came to be are depictions of Dominican culture. Disturbed areas are important in Dominica as settlements, and at the same time they harbor a large amount of the medicinal flora examined in this research. The widespread use of knowledge and use illustrates cultural salience regarding species. And the overall cultural importance of these plants as medicines and the continued use throughout Dominica's history signals to their establishment within Dominican culture. So to truly understand medicinal plant use within Dominican culture and furthermore within all cultures, there are cultural aspects that need to be acknowledged, i.e. the relationship that culture has with the environment, their perceptions and beliefs regarding health and healing, where these are, where these came from, the role they play within this society, in addition to the actual species of medicinal plants.
Thank you to the first two presenters. Very interesting and informative, and obviously we heard of the synergy in terms of the influences, in terms of the plant culture, and also the adaptations in terms of these of knowledge. So do we have questions for our first two presenters?
Hello, I have a question for the presentation about Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
The bark of the bitterwood mauby is well known as a Trinidadian bitter tonic ingredient. Did you incorporate that in your questionnaire, or is mauby more seen as a food than as a medicine?